Hello, world. It is March 15, 2021. It is business tax filing deadline today. It's been a month almost. Sorry, everybody. But I'll get back to that. Today's episode number 167. Should I sell my house or rent it out? This is 39.6 Facebook and YouTube Live Finance Show, the show that teaches high earners like yourselves how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. Talk general investing, taxes, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, paying for college, paying for childcare, and even the car you drive. Today's episode, should I sell my house, cash out, or should I hold on to it as a rental? So sorry, it's been almost a month. I didn't think it was quite that long. I took a vacation for a week. Parents came in town. We had a COVID reunion with the grandkids, so everybody's been vaccinated. Then I got back from vacation, and that's almost as bad as vacation is good, because the pileup of work that awaits when I get back is incredible. And the number of referrals I've gotten in the past couple of weeks has been like 2 times my normal, in addition to having taken a week off. So I've been working like almost 3 times as much as my normal. I really haven't made the time to do an episode because I get home and I'm just done. So finally starting to catch up, and want to catch up over here. It's been a while. I'm going to try to get a bunch of episodes done this week. Today's episode comes out of a question from a Facebook group. It's an anonymous post and says, we are a 2-physician family with an annual income of around $600,000. Our current house, which is totally paid off, has appreciated by approximately $150,000. $150,000 over the past couple of years. Planning to move to another city for another job, not too far away from the current place. What are our best options? 1, sell the house in this current seller's market. Use it toward payment of our new house. Okay, number 2, rent it out. Or 3, okay, that's basically it. 1 is sell it and use the money toward the next one, or 2, rent it out. Okay, so this is a position that I think a lot of people can see themselves in, especially it's March, and a lot of people, if they're changing jobs at the end of like the academic calendar, end of June, like they're graduating from training or they just got another job. A lot of people move in the summertime, and they may have job offers right now that they're signing these contracts. And so they're planning forward and saying what to do. Well, yes, we are in unbelievable seller's market right now, pretty much all over the country, more so in some places, but inventory is just so low with very low interest rates. A lot of people carrying a lot more cash savings than usual due to COVID from last year. And so people can put more down on properties and the interest rates are low. So a lot of people have a lot more spending power. All right, so this is a complicated question. There's so many pieces of information that would be useful. And like we often see in people's posts, we are getting just the tip of the question, but the answer is not in the tip. The answer is in all the background information, which we don't know. Okay, it's always funny. People often say, I just have a quick question for you. Yeah, the question may be quick, but the answer is often inversely related to the question. Like the shorter you give me as a question stem, the more information I have to discuss because I have so little information to work with, right? But anyhow, should we sell or should we hold and become non-plan landlords? First of all, they say it's appreciated over the past couple of years, and I don't know what that means, couple of years. This is a very important technicality here. let's presume that they haven't rented it out before. It sounds like they haven't because they're just bringing up the idea of renting it out now. So I'm going to assume that these people have been owner occupants of the property since they bought it. Okay, they've never rented it. And that they've lived in it now for a couple of years. And that could be more than 2 years. It could be less than 2 years. It could literally be 2 years on the nose. It could be the 2-year anniversary of having closed on that property. This is really important information. Okay. There's the capital gains tax exclusion. Okay. They're married people. If they hold on to the property for 24 months since they bought it and they sell it after the 2-year birthday or anniversary of having taken over that house, they pay 0% capital gains tax on the first $500,000 of capital gains. Therefore, they would pay no tax on these gains of $160,000. Now, they also say that they earn $600,000 a year, which is on the border of being at the top tax bracket. Okay. So that could be very important because let's pretend they've lived in it for 25 months and they sell it. They will pay no capital gains and they get to cash out $160,000. Awesome. In addition, they'll get all their original money back. Okay. But that $160,000 of gains is non-taxable. It's kind of like a Roth IRA, tax-free gains. Then let's pretend they purchased it and they've owned it for 21 months and they go through the whole process and sell it, and they sell it at the 23.5-month time point, but don't get to 24 months at the time of the closing. So then they will have owned it for over 1 year, but less than 2 years. So that puts it into a second category, which would be regular long-term capital gains. Okay, which is basically, it's the same as it would have been before, but instead of having a 0% tax bracket for $500,000, there's no more 0% tax bracket. So you go directly to the long-term capital gains bracket, which is 15% for most people. It's 0% for some people, and it is 23.8% for some people. So if you're at the top tax bracket, you could be paying 23.8% long-term capital gains. Okay. If you are like under $100,000, then you'll be paying like no long-term capital gains. However, you're selling and making $160,000 of profit. So even if you had no income, that $160,000 would take you all the way through past 100K. So anyhow, if you've lived in it between 1 year and 2 years, you're in this intermediate territory where you're not paying 0% tax, but you could be paying 15% or 23.8% tax. Then the third thing is if they were in it for less than a year, this would be considered short-term capital gains. There's no capital gains exclusion. All of the gains would immediately jump to the top tax bracket, like be 37%, and you'd pay like the NIIT 3.8%. So it ends up being 40.8% federal. So that's just a no-go. But the person says a couple of years. So we know they've been there for more than 1 year, probably closer to 2. And that's where it's key. So first you want to know how much capital gains tax you're paying, so you have that answer to make your decision. Okay. It could be that this year, if you sell it right now or sell in the summer, you're going to be between 1 and 2, but it could be that your taxable income for this current year might still keep you under the top tax bracket where you're getting it at 15%, which isn't all that bad. 24% is definitely a lot higher, but 2022, FYI, we're expecting tax brackets to go up, especially for people who are earning $600,000. So that could affect long-term capital gains, a lot of things. Okay, so there might be some impetus to sell it this year, even if you're paying long-term capital gains, just because next year it could be a lot worse. For example, there have been discussions that long-term capital gains would be taxed as short-term capital gains under the new Biden administration, so that it would go right up to the top ordinary income rate. And that would be horrible. The difference between paying like 15% now on $160,000, which is like 15% of 160,000 is going to be $24,000. Or if you're paying 41% on that, that's $64,000. That's a lot of money. A lot of extra tax just based on tax situations. So that's something to be very cognizant of. Before you even discuss the rental, you want to know how much of that money is actually yours at 160,000, because you'll have to pay tax on it at either 0% or 15 or 23.8%. Okay. Now, let's say you figured that out, and let's pretend you don't have to pay any capital gains. That's fantastic. So you can get that whole 160,000 tax-free. But then you're like, now your question really would be, would I take all of this money and buy this property, assuming I could do the whole thing hassle-free, although it never is hassle-free, but let's just pretend, would I take my cash, buy this property as a rental property and rent it out? So I don't know how much the property is actually worth. We just know it's gone up by $160,000. Let's say it went up from $500 to $660. Okay, would you take $660 and buy this property as a rental property? If you definitely wouldn't, then maybe you don't want to hold on to it as a rental. Now, I understand that holding on to it as a rental could be appealing because you already have the property, and buying a property is work and effort. Getting the mortgage, you might have really great financing on this property. Okay, that is one thing that you do want to take into consideration. Like if you have a great loan on it right now at 3.1%, and you might not be able to get that kind of financing if you just went and bought a regular other rental property that might have a little bit better numbers, a little bit. And well, actually you own it in cash right now, but let's pretend you had a loan on it. If you have really great loan terms, that's one kind of pro to holding on to it, because the numbers might be more favorable just because you already have the property at a specific rate. But I do always like to think of it in the backwards direction, as in, would you, if you had all the cash today, buy that property amongst all the other properties available? Because if there's another property just down the street with much better numbers, then you probably want to cash out and get that other property. Yeah, there's work, and you have to take into consideration the value and time, effort of that work. But if the numbers don't really work, the numbers just don't really work. Now, one of the first questions I always ask when people ask this question is, will it cash flow? Well, in this situation, they own it outright. So yeah, it's going to cash flow once you start collecting rent, assuming that the repairs are not like 100% of the expenses, or the repairs and property tax aren't more than all of the rental income. That's not likely going to happen. If you have a paid off property, it's going to cash flow. But is it going to cash flow well enough that it's worth it? Or do you really anticipate it's going to appreciate strong enough that it's worth it? Okay, it should cash flow first, right? And how much cash flow should you have? You need to calculate what the cap rate is on that property. So the cap rate is your net operating income divided by the value of the property, and basically the cash that they already have in there as equity. So that's $660,000. Let's pretend it cash flows 3%. Okay, 3% of $660,000 is going to be around $20,000 a year. 3% cash flow is not very good cash flow. Now let's pretend that this is in a market where you really expect to get 10% growth in the next year. Okay, then you're looking at 13%, but growth is really speculation. Okay, but if there's really good evidence that it'll appreciate, for example, this is a property that's $660,000, but your neighbors on each side are $1.5 million. Okay, and there's 5 houses on the same block that are being torn down and flipped into much bigger, expensive properties. Then there is very strong expectation for appreciation, because that's like a forced appreciation, not just, oh, the whole city is going up or the whole state's going up in value. No, that block is going up probably faster than other the average of the city. Okay, so if you really know that market well, you might say, oh, well, that might be worth holding on to it because of that very strong expectation for appreciation. But let's pretend the cash flow is like 2% and you own it outright. Then you're only making money on the property cash flow wise because you own it. It wouldn't even make sense if you had any leverage on it. So I also want to think about the property like, let's pretend you had gotten a loan at 20, 25, 30% on the property, maybe 33%, so that you have some leverage. Would the property make sense with debt? Would it still cash flow? If it does cash flow, now your overall returns are going to be more leveraged and overall stronger. And of course, you now have more risk because you have a loan on it. But does it make sense that way? Because I hate to see people forcing squares into circles. Like, just because you have the property, it doesn't mean that property is a good property as a rental. Like, people say, well, this property is right next door to me, so I want to buy this as a rental property. But would you buy that property as a rental property if it weren't next to you? If you wouldn't, don't buy it as a rental property, unless there's a really good reason why you want to have control of that property next to you for whatever reasons they may be, which can also provide value to you. Okay. But yeah, does it make sense? Does it make sense as a rental with leverage? Does it make sense in terms of the cap rate? Is it owned in all cash? And then just the intangibles, like, do you even want to own a rental property? Okay. If you don't want to own a rental property, then just get rid of the property and invest in things you want to invest in. Maybe you don't want to have one property. Maybe you want to have more diverse assets. Maybe you'd rather buy a multifamily property. Maybe you'd rather sell one thing and then buy a fourplex or buy an eightplex or something like that. Because if you had $660,000, you could easily buy a $2 million property. That could be 40 units in some places, right? That's a big multifamily property. So there's a lot of things to question, and we can't possibly answer this based on the information provided, but those are a lot of the things that I think about when people ask these sorts of things. All right. Hi from San Antonio. So by the way, this is weird. So I never can actually see people's names in my chat, but if you go to chat.restream.io/FB for Facebook, then you should be able to, I think, hook up your account to Restream. So then I think then I can actually see what people are posting. All right. I think I covered that one. Enough for tonight. This one is brought to you by our sponsors for today, the Multifamily Masterclass. We just announced this course. I haven't sent an email out to my group, but there is a post on our Facebook group. Thanks, Kate, for posting it for me. We put a course together. Me, Kate, and Vina, and Kathy Carroll, and a bunch of other guests. Multifamily Masterclass. Check it out. It's a lot of educational material. I do a little bit of it, so I'm privileged to be part of it and thankful for the opportunity. But you get to actually hear Vina do a lot of teaching, which you don't often get to do. So definitely check it out if you're interested. I certainly will try and listen to them all myself as well at some point. All right, that is it for tonight. Until episode 168.